please take the time to read through these. I do want to draw attention to the September 11th date, which is already passed. We are working diligently to certify all delegates and all email addresses that we need to in turn hand over to the company that's working with us for convention. The original deadline for this information was May 6th. The deadline via the supplemental order was September the 11th. And we know that, that we're going to give a third opportunity, and you will get an email, a very detailed email today that will give specific information, and we are looking for everything to be in by 5 o'clock on Friday, this Friday. So if you'll just take the time to look at all of that, and please pay specific attention to the different things that we need. In particular, it's very important that each delegate and each clergy person have their own email address. That's for the certification of our delegates. And we have a lot of couples that serve as delegates, and they use one email address. So just pay attention to that. And if needed, it's real easy to go on and register for a Gmail address or something that individuals can use just for this day, if that will work for all of you. So in moving toward the information that we promised today regarding virtual annual meetings, I am, first and foremost, I want to start off with gratitude. As Bishop Waldo was saying, there have been a lot of meetings throughout the Episcopal Church during COVID about how do we as a church offer virtual meetings. And so to extend that gratitude to the diocesan business administrators, diocesan convention leaders, the church pension group, the presiding bishop's office, all of these entities and more have been involved with not only helping to educate and share resources, but also providing just the collegiality as we all work together. As Bishop Waldo mentioned, especially the Province 4 Transition Officers Group, and within our own diocese, I cannot say enough about those that make up our convention committee. There's a lot of people within the diocese that have been attending webinars and doing research and planning for what we hope is going to be a very successful convention this year. So as you look at these people and many more across the church, please take some time to extend gratitude to all of them. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that I will be sending out this PowerPoint. So you will have that. We will also post it on the website. And this webinar is also being recorded, and we will post that on the website as well. If your wardens or if there are any other clergy person that need to come back and revisit this, you certainly will be able to do so. And thanks to Alan for getting all of that together. So the agenda for today is this: 5 things to consider. The first thing we're going to cover is, does South Carolina state law allow virtual business meetings? The second thing, do our governing documents allow virtual business meetings? How will we know whether a quorum is present? What special rules will we follow for discussion and voting? And then best practices and resources. So as I go through this information, if you have questions that come to mind, if you will enter them in the chat box, and right before you write the question, if you don't mind typing the word question, this will make it really easy to identify which are questions and which are comments. And Jimmy and Alan and I and the bishop will be looking, and when we get to to the end of this presentation. We'll try to answer as many as we can. If we don't have the answers today to one of your questions, we will get it out to you in writing. So just want to let you know that. So, does South Carolina state law allow virtual business meetings? This is from our diocesan chancellor, Kirby Shealy. Section 3331701 of Nonprofit Corporation Acts governs the holdings of meetings. We're going to put a link on the website to that particular law. And it states it does not expressly provide for holding meetings virtually. It says that such meetings may be held in and out of the state at the place stated that are fixed in accordance with your bylaws. So this is where your congregational bylaws are really, really important as to, one, whether or not you can offer virtual meetings, and two, how those virtual meetings can be offered, if you can indeed do that. The official comment to this section says the bylaws may state the time and place of annual and regular meetings, or may authorize the board or some other person to determine the time and place of annual and regular meetings. It just so happens that in our diocesan canons, when we, well, it was even in there before we edited the canon several years ago, but we have a canon in our diocesan canons that says that in case of a pandemic, our diocesan executive council, the bishop can make recommendations to our diocesan executive council, and they can affirm how and when our convention will be called. So we relied on that canon when we were making our own plans. And so not only look in your canons, and I'm going to show a couple of examples of this, but not only look in your bylaws for how you advertise or how it says that you're going to offer your meetings, but also look at all the other information around an annual meeting, like elections, a confirmation of your congregational budget. Look at how each of those things need to be offered and how each of those things need to be available, because that information as well will let you know how easy it will be for you to offer a virtual meeting. So do our governing documents allow virtual business meetings? From our diocesan canons, the guidance is this: there will be an annual meeting of the communicants in good standing who are members of each parish or mission in the diocese each year between November 1 and February 28 for the purpose of electing wardens and vestry members and of transacting such other business as may come before the annual meeting. For purposes of this canons, members of a parish or mission shall be those persons listed as members in the official record of the parish or mission. 30 calendar days notice of the meeting shall be given to the parish or mission by the rector or vicar, or if there is no rector or vicar, by the vestry. And so that's what our diocesan canons govern as far as your annual meeting. So I thought it would be fun to just take a look at a few congregations. I pulled what their bylaws say about offering annual meetings, and some of these it's pretty clear. Well, all of these, it's clear which church I pulled them from. But just looking at what your bylaws say, I hope this gives everybody a variety of things to look for. The first one is there shall be an annual parish meeting on or about St. Martin's Day, November 11th, or at some time prior to the November vestry meeting. So that one gives a lot of flexibility, and it also gives the opportunity to hold a virtual meeting, because it does not stipulate that the meeting has to be in person. Now, there might be somewhere else in that congregation's bylaws that it stipulates that either voting has to be in person or things like that. So that's why I say make sure that you check all the sections that relate to your annual meeting. Another example, there shall be an annual meeting of the parish of St. Mary's to be held at the time and place determined by the vestry. Well, there's flexibility right there. 2 weeks notice shall be given via electronic communication tools and verbal announcement at Sunday worship. So that gives your parameters right there. And then this one, there shall be an annual meeting of the communicants of the parish on the Monday following the first Sunday in Advent or on such other day as may be appointed by the vestry. 1 week notice of such meeting shall be given by the rector or vestry. Here again, there's flexibility. The other thing that I want to say is to, in highlighting the paying close attention to additional details, there was one set of canons that, one set of bylaws that I looked at, and it says the election of vestry members shall be by secret written ballot. So you have to think through that. If we offer something that's virtual, how will we be able to ensure secret ballot? Because the thing that you have to remember in virtual meetings is that even though we have flexibility, if a particular bylaw makes a stipulation, that stipulation has to be fulfilled. If you also have the flexibility within your bylaws that your vestry can set different rules, that's what we're going to be talking about next. Or add one more slide. So how will we know whether a quorum is present? Take time to think through more than just the technical capabilities of your chosen software. A quorum, that is the minimum number of people needed to transact business, is a baseline requirement for a compliant business meeting of any kind. Meetings virtually doesn't eliminate or relax that requirement. And that's what I was talking about just before we got to this slide. You have to really strive to work toward and fulfill your bylaws. So choose the correct tools, platform, voting company, and integrate capabilities into a feasible plan, and making sure that that feasible plan is well written, approved by your vestry, and then communicated to the communicants of your congregation. Our diocesan convention is going to utilize Zoom and a technology company known as vPoll that's going to administer our elections. And so we will be working with that company to ensure that the supplemental rules approved by our standing committee are fully executed when we have votes. And you will want to define and communicate that process for clarifying quorum. When you go back and read the supplemental rules of order that we have for our diocesan convention, you will see that specifically how quorum will be certified. So what special rules would we follow for discussion and voting? You will create those supplemental rules of order, and feel free to use our diocesan supplemental rules as a template. I'll make sure that we get a Word document out to everybody that will be easily edited. You can use that as a template to create your own supplemental rules of order. To define the communication, the use of technology, your planned process, and action. One of the things that we're working on from our convention meeting yesterday is we're going to make sure that our setup for the people who are going to be present at Trinity Cathedral, that there is a layout of the convention space, that there's a layout that indicates where each aspect of position, where that main table would be. So everybody who is working virtually will know where everything is and what each person is there to do. So some things to consider: your technological capabilities, the principles and common practice of the congregation. If you have a small congregation and you don't think that that a virtual convention is the way to go, that's okay. We certainly can come up with other flexible ways in which to have an annual meeting. I'll give a couple of examples of dioceses that didn't have, in the context of their canons, the ability to be able to have a virtual convention. So they had a one-day drive-in convention where the only action item was to approve a virtual meeting. And so the deputations drove up in their cars and they had a vote and off they went with that type of meeting approved. So know that even within the context of everything that we have to offer, there are other flexible ways to do that. And how you've moved forward in this time and your liturgy planning and things like that. That's a good baseline to look at what's working well for your congregation and a good sense of what might work best. And also pay attention to practice and modify any bylaws that need to be approved by the vestry in advance. If there's any aspect of your bylaws that you need to alter, on behalf of your annual meeting, please make sure that those are approved by your vestry and then communicated. So best practices. These are some things that were offered throughout the Episcopal Church that you really want to think through as you're working toward this. Walk through convention point by point, all details needed. We're going to have a dress rehearsal with our representative from VPOL for Diocesan Convention that he is going to know what the agenda looks like, how it's going to move, and we're going to do troubleshooting before the actual day of convention. The other neat thing to know about our VPOL person is that he's going to be doing 4 other diocesan conventions before he gets to us. And so he's going to have the opportunity to work out kinks as it relates to Episcopal conventions. So you want to do that as well with your annual meetings. Communicate what to expect to your communicants and practice. Registration form asks what kind of technology available to your communicants. So make sure you're very clear about the type of technology that will be needed. Plan breaks on the agenda. Studies show that breaks increase retention. If we give people a time to step away from the Zoom screen, they're going to think about what they've heard, and that's a good thing to recommend. Have a common headquarter, which like what we're going to do at the cathedral, where all the officers from your vestry are in the same room for meeting time, practicing appropriate social distancing and protocol for COVID as outlined in our guidelines. You want to have a cellular hotspot ready in case you have an internet outage. Think about multiple screens for monitoring. We're going to have multiple screens for our DIOS in those who are going to have primary responsibility with convention. This a plan to keep people muted when they should be. That's really important because if people are not muted, it's going to pick up a lot of background noise. And so you want to make sure that you have those capabilities. Good lighting, you want to make sure that's available. Clear list of roles and assign people. Better one person, one role chain of command. And that's something that we've been talking a lot about on diocesan staff. What is the best way to utilize staff and utilize our convention committee so that on the day of, if problems come up, we're not going to be tripping over each other, but we'll be able to more proactively know, oh, X is the person I need to talk to about why. A project timeline with to-do action items and assigning tasks to key people. We too have got that going for diocesan convention. Determine and record what can be pre-recorded. Alan is going to be working with all of the people that have reports on our agenda, and anything that can be pre-recorded, it will be pre-recorded. Present rules of order as the first order of business for your meeting. The supplemental rules that you saw earlier, that's going to be the first item on our agenda, is for our body to approve and to ratify those rules and how we operate. And here again, thinking and considering technological capabilities, principles and common practice of the congregation, and any practice that modifies bylaws that will need to be approved by the vestry in advance. And so some resources. Here are several voting, internet voting services that our dioceses are using, kind of across the church. And once you get this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on these links, go to those websites, and get a feel of what those particular websites have to offer. And then technological platform. We have some articles here to look to, the 5 questions churches should ask, which I've based this webinar on. That full article is here, but just some helpful things for you to look at and to think about as you plan your annual meeting.